I think we have to ask that fundamental first principles question. What is the problem we are trying to solve?
And what is the problem you're trying to solve?
We want learners to be able to sit in the driver's seat and decide where that learning journey must go, where what it must look like, what are all the experiences they'd like added to it, what are the internships they'd like to do, who are the creative people that they'd like to meet and be inspired by. So we know the saying that you can't be what you cannot see.
Welcome to Will Talks, everybody. Today, I have a brilliant friend, a mentor, and a guide to me. His name is Naveen Mahesh. Naveen has been working in the educational space for over 15, 20 years now. He's actually has a financial background. He was an investment banker back in Wall Street. He's dabbled around with multiple industries. He loves technology. I remember very well that he built a company based on AI and artificial intelligence, which was doing work around assessment 7 or 8 years ago when this was not common everyday language. Naveen also helps his mom, who runs a school. So Naveen and his wife, Raji, run a brilliant school called the HLC school in Chennai. And that is a school that I highly recommend people go and visit and really learn from them. Naveen, I'm so happy that we finally got an opportunity to sit down and formally have a conversation so that more people can benefit from your experience and your insights. And one thing I wanted to share is, every time I call you, I get so many new ideas, and the ideas that I get are unique because you always look at breaking the mold. You always look at doing something new. What do you think in schools today in India needs to be broken?
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's exhilarating every time we meet. We've known each other for 15, 20 years now. And I feel very mutually about you. I learned so many things every time I meet you. And even today, the things you shared with me were exciting. And I can't wait to get back to work and try some of these ideas, right? As for your question, I think if we continue doing the things we did in the past, you will only get what you also got. As I can't think of a better way to put that. I heard someone else much smarter say that. But the essence is that you cannot get new outcomes if you just continue doing old things. So education is just waiting to be disrupted for all these 200 years that we've known formal education, 200 plus years of formal education. It was just a convenience to keep kids in school while both adults, parents went to work. Beyond that, what we do in education has become more of a convenience for adults, suiting the convenience of adults, suiting the convenience of industry, suiting the convenience of the institution. Nobody ever goes and asks a learner, what do you want to learn today? And but I'm very hopeful that in the coming years, in 5 to 10 years, if we don't see this change, this narrative change, we would only have ourselves to blame. So I'm pretty excited about the future.
I mean, India, like 2 million schools. That's what they're talking about. They're saying 20 lakh schools in India. To put things into perspective, in the UK, we have 28,000 schools, right? So the scale is huge. So I don't think India really needs more schools, right? What India needs is better schools so that the kids in India get a better education and a better shot at life, right? So what do you think we can do better inside our schools? And feel free to talk about your own experiments as well. I know I've been following your work very closely, and you've had tremendous success in certain ideas that other school leaders would think is unattainable.
It's an interesting journey I've had in education, right? I was encouraged to fail because I think when you try new things, you fail at many of them, most of them, in fact. But that's how also you learn. But if you keep doing the things that you know to do right, those are mistakes. You don't want to repeat mistakes, but you should be unafraid of failures. And so I've had journeys with rural schools, tribal schools. I've worked with IFMR to try and understand how rural education, how teachers in rural settings can improve their education system. I work with tribal schools across Tamil Nadu. I work with government schools through in a board capacity. Nearly 30 million kids benefit from some of the work that an organization does, on which I'm a board member. Uh, these are all experiences that have given me a very rich insight, I would say, into what are we doing that is adding value to learners, and what are we doing because it was done in the past. Honestly, uh, with the advent of all these technologies that are coming, I think just going to school itself is a whole lot of waste of time in much of schooling systems, because the person teaching himself or herself does not know the topic very well. Schools are not the custodians of knowledge anymore. Knowledge is just available in a myriad number of ways from different people in different contexts at different times. We don't have to look to one setting, one set of people to gather knowledge. Having said that, I think coming together is very important. They say that communication is 10% through words, 90% bodily. So I think coming together is important. How we use these spaces as an opportunity to come together and learn from each other, be excited to be there every day. Often children come to school thinking, how can I continue yesterday's conversations with my friends? But they're sent to class and told only to talk between classes. So their purpose is being met only between classes. The school's purpose is completely different, right? So I think building more schools, obviously, there are lots of kids not uh, going to school at all. There's the one problem that many people who enroll in school don't go on to high school and college. So there's that problem. And many children don't go to school at all. So I do feel that building more schools is not a solution. Lots of NGOs I know think that they need to build a school. Often one has to ask, what is the capability of the team of people they have, the resources they have, what's the vision? Without asking all those things, they just go and build a school. Good heart and good will is a good starting point, but not sufficient.
That's so true. That's so true. Um, from especially, I'm intrigued about this question because you're a finance professional before in your, yesteryears, and from what I remember, you dabbled around with private equity. And so, what is it that a finance professional knows and now understands about schools and the way schools work financially that many school leaders perhaps are oblivious to? And I'm asking this question because I'm reminded of a conversation I had with an edupreneur who runs a chain of preschools out of Bangalore, and he told me, Willie, in the course of the pandemic, every passionate only educator or passionate only school leader, their school will shut down. But an astute edupreneur who understands the commercial discipline of the business, their schools will double and thrive during the COVID. And I actually saw that happen. I saw that happening. What is it that is absolutely smack in front of a school leader that he probably is not paying attention to?
Uh, the way I would frame this thought is that typically schools, if you go back sufficiently in time, schools have been, we've tacked on almost everything onto schools. Schools are the places where their physical development is required, emotional development is required, mental well-being has to be catered to, their cognitive development has to be catered to. It's come to a point, even schools have started to think they have to solve all the problems. People come from a business and finance background tend to understand this very critical thing about business success. It requires a tremendous focus to know what you won't do. It's often schools are afraid or schools are unwilling to say, I don't know and I won't do it. I think we have to call out what we're very good at and stick to those few things that we can actually do well in a way that it contributes meaningfully to children's lives, and stay clear of the things that society may be asking. We don't go and ask every business to do everything, right? We go, if a TV manufacturer is there or an electronics manufacturer is there, you don't go and say, make a bed for me, correct? Why do we go and ask schools to do everything that is related to a child's developmental needs? Schools are not the place, and most things have left school. If you think about it, sports has left school.
Yes.
Right? Music has left school, right? Arts have left school. Who is in school? The people who and there are enough stories going around that call out to how much time prisoners spend time in prisons and how much time children spend in classes, and children tend to spend more time in class than prisoners do in prisons. So that tells you that we have to recognize that the models we have followed are not the models for the future. We have to recognize that uh, we should not take up everything that people society asks. If you come tell me an idea, this is a brilliant idea, Naveen, you should do it. I should have the humility to say I don't know anything about it, and I think you're best at it. I will point all those who come and ask me for this to come to Willie instead and not to me, right? I think learning to say no is a big skill that I would encourage all organizations. I think finance professionals understand it because by definition, it's you work with limited resources, limited capabilities. Apply it in very narrow areas and seek success. 95% of businesses don't succeed. This we know. Why do schools think they'll succeed at everything? We have a big population. There are people willing to pay for mediocre education just because they need daycare services, right? So for that reason, you may be financially successful by running a school, but financial professionals have stayed cleared of traditional models of schooling, and they go into models that can that are potentially that have that exponential growth potential. But even those I'm not enamored by, because education is a very personal activity. Every child, no problem stays solved in a dynamic environment. We've heard this as educators, right? And as time has gone by, children have changed, society has changed, the materials we have learned from have changed, the context in which we live has changed, right? When all of these things are changing, you better know what you want to pick in that to solve. If you think you can solve all of them, you'd be kidding yourself, I would think.
This is so helpful for a school leader, because what you're actually saying is don't run after everything. Don't do everything that is presented to you as an opportunity, because when you're doing everything, you're probably doing nothing. And from a angle of even building and developing your school, right? The staff that you bring in, the content that you decide to teach, the curriculum that you decide to follow, the amount of time that you decide to give for certain things, all that can be better fashioned when you have the laser focus that.
Yeah, and when you have institutional capability, often people think their individual competency is sufficient to build companies around those ideas. Their competency is sufficient to get the job done if they did the job themselves alone. For organizational capability, every one of the individuals engaged in that task or job have to have individual competencies to pull off that the goal. So I think building competency across an organization is a lifetime's task.
And in schools, it's challenging, because I see that the highest paid person on the team is probably the principal, and then the principal is expected to do everything, and the principal is expected to be this one man army or one lady army, which is absolutely not right. So this idea of institutional capacity, organizational capacity as a whole, is a very powerful idea, whereby we can start looking at moving from the leader to leadership in that sense. Have you what insights would you like to share around that in your personal journey as well? How do you build organizational capability? Why should you build organization capability? Does building organizational capability, does that even make good business sense? Because a lot of people think, oh, what if I train them and they leave me? Yeah.
I think that's the point, right? Building organization-wide capability and having a distinct set of 4 or 5 capabilities. You don't try to build 400 capabilities. Again, we'll go back to the same problem that schools are already doing, right? So build 4 to 6 organization-wide capabilities and make sure that all of us are knowledge workers who work in education industry. Even in industry, we are all white collar jobs are knowledge workers. We want to learn, we want to use that knowledge in the economy, right? So it's important to build that capability and capacity in your organization to be able to consistently deliver a programmatic offering. If we think that people, there is churn and we have to plan for the churn, there's no other way today. The fact that different models of engaging in workplaces exist today has become evident because of the COVID, right? And so people are willing to choose out of traditional models, and they're saying, I would like to pursue it in a way that meets all of my various demands on my time, my interests. So I think building that capability should be done with the intent, with the belief that even if a few people leave, you've got the same capability because it's organization wide. That's why it's valuable. So you shouldn't be afraid that people will leave, and people stay and come not for salaries. Your other point about this hierarchy of who gets paid how much. Yes, the stakes are high for the people that give it the most, and there's probably nothing wrong in that idea. But fundamentally, people come to work because they find that they have that autonomy, they have the agency, they are cherished. There's a lot of empathy for one another. The salaries, especially in social sector, I work with so many other NGOs. I work, all of the other education work is also social enterprises. All these engagements that I find my colleagues doing, they're doing it because there is a mission orientation to the work, and mission trumps any cash you can pay to compensate. So I would say mission oriented organizations, if they make the mission more well understood, if there's collective mastery across the organization, everybody knows what is the organizational strategy, what do we want to achieve, what are the few things that we're going to do exceptionally well, and we do them well, you'll always find new people wanting to join it because the mission is so important to society itself.
That's a very valid point, and that kind of drives me to start thinking about the dollar to efficiency. For example, every time that a child goes to a school today, let's say in Bangalore or in Chennai, schools are getting more and more expensive, and what I'm noticing is, uh, apart from just the address or maybe a little bit of the elevation, largely most of these schools remain the same. Please correct me if I'm wrong, right? But largely most schools, given an acre or two here and there, remain the same. And if you've seen a couple of schools in an area like Chennai or Bangalore over a 7-year period, you may even find same teachers and same principals, shifting jobs and being away. So largely what I'm trying to get at is, although it appears like there are many different schools for parents to choose from, do you think that most of them are pretty much offering the same product in some way or form? And I'm speaking from a model perspective, or from a structural perspective, from the gains perspective, or from a, if you understand.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on. First of all, you go to a village and see kids going to school, and you go to the best international schools in this country, they're all in uniform.
Yes.
First thing, as if they're all going to go to some assembly work right after school, right? They're all in uniform. They're all following a more or less similar calendar. We have priced just the opportunity to see and experience more things, right? Some of which children don't even experience or want. We're giving things like swimming pool and horse riding in schools when 3 children in the school probably are actually interested in it. If it's a school for horse riding alone, they probably do a damn good job in training for equestrian or whatever, right? But if schools started doing horse riding, it will go the same way football went and cricket went and tennis went and music went out of school. So, but schools fundamentally are trying to be a one-stop shop for a lot of things based on the resources they have. A poorer school, because of the lack of resources, will put together a basic format of school education. The same basic format, slightly more colorfully in cooler rooms with whiteboards, is offered in a different setting. This is not to say that every school that is a high fee charging school is a bad school. I think there's a school for everybody. I think there are great schools which have fantastic infrastructure and have a phenomenal amount of provide a lot of autonomy and agency to learners, and learners are actually thriving as a result of going there. And there are schools which provide just that infrastructure and nothing more than that. They resemble pretty much the government school that is down the street, right? So I think there's a lot. They're similar in many ways, but they're also different. A parent really, my suggestion would be, there's a school for everybody. I think we all have to identify with the philosophy of the organization that backs up that school. What do they value? What are they trying to do as a mission? And how much of that mission is aligned with the family? And how can they further that mission? So I would usually say to parents, if you find 50% happiness, 51% happiness in a school, don't leave that school, because you could go to a school where you may be less than 50%. You don't know what you're getting. Don't go by the things that you hear and the things that you say. Finally, the child's going to interact, like you've pointed out in many of your other podcasts. It's with the teacher in the room, it's with the peers in the class, and you can't curate that experience. So if you have 51% happiness, I would say work with the school and try to make it 60%, and don't seek 100% happiness, because it's an illusion that you can get there. You can't.
This is so true, because one of the professors I was talking to from the US, he said that, a school leader should never look at a solution that is a 100% solution. They got to be looking at these multiple 5% solutions so that
Yeah.
they can get to
Yeah,
the.
just promise what is attainable, not impossible things. We are promising impossible things. I think promise just what is attainable and deliver it. People will thank you for it.
And something so simple, something so true, something so genuine and so authentic, yet people are afraid to do. It's probably because of unrealistic expectations that parents have out of schools. As you said, the parent is looking at school to do everything for them, right? Literally. And in a case like that, and schools are forced to do things that, at least promise things that they cannot do. But I want to amplify that point about peer learning. I want to amplify the point about the atmosphere and the environment and the social components and construct of the classroom that happens. And I want to bring that front and center, because if a school is going to be promoting and always talking about its infrastructure or CCTV or library or airy classrooms or well-stocked libraries, things like that, you start finding people who want that in that classroom, and then hence you've got a group or a tribe or a small little microcosm of society there, all of them looking for that one thing. But I love what he said. Like, if a school can have the courage to know what they are able to do well, which is, I think, back to your point on organizational capability, and two, if they can have the courage to communicate that to people, so that people can then understand that this is the vision, values, this is the philosophy, this is their mission, this is what these guys are doing, and they're capable of doing it and achieving it.
Yeah.
Those people coming into the classroom starts creating that culture, right? Do you think culture makes a big difference in the attainment of learning inside a school?
Absolutely. I think, you've all, lots of people have gone out and said culture beats strategy,
For breakfast.
all of these things,
Yeah.
right? I don't think anything beats anything. I think you can't do without culture. You can't do without, if you work without strategy, if you, what is that saying? They say that if you don't have a plan, any destination is a good outcome, no? So often what happens is, if you don't have a strategy in place, you would land up going somewhere more by serendipity and more by not by design. And you could potentially get to a good outcome, but it's not an outcome you actually sought or anybody sought. Culture is something that draws more people to the mission. Like I earlier said, I think mission driven organizations tend to be have stronger cultures. I've worked a lot in mission driven organizations. I moved from traditional industry work to education, and I have never looked back. I enjoyed this journey of 20 years in education, because I think the building culture is an everyday activity. When you start an organization, you've brought a certain culture to it, and you're not the only one bringing that culture. Everybody is adding to that culture, but you can curate it. You can call out certain values that you think are very important to the organization. By putting the learner first, in a learner determined education, what are the values that we must uphold at all times, and let that be the driver of all decisions. But I can't stress enough that culture is often overlooked. We think that we can hire great people for great salaries and get the job done. I have often found that people with the right culture are a far, far better fit than people with the right pedigree. If they have the pedigree and the culture, nothing like it. But culture, of the two, I would pick culture first, because they have to work with people. We don't work in silos. When you work in an organization, you work with other people. If you don't understand the culture, are not willing to adapt to that culture, add value to that culture in your own beautiful ways, you're fundamentally not a misfit in that organization, right? So I hope that was a reasonable response.
I think it's a brilliant way for me to start thinking about improvement. You spoke about how schools are culture based, have a fairly common structure. Most schools look alike and look like difficult. If you remove the logo, from two different schools, you probably won't be able to make out the difference between both the schools. So that then kind of pushes me to this idea that merely improving the system little by little or adding more and more into the system is not the solution. The solution is to completely break this model entirely, or the solution could be to develop an entirely new model of learning and education
Yeah, I
in
think
such a way that it makes the existing model look obsolete.
absolutely. I think we have to ask that fundamental first principles question. What is the problem we are trying to solve?
And what is the problem you're trying to solve?
We want learners to be able to sit in the driver's seat and decide where that learning journey must go, where what it must look like, what are all the experiences they'd like added to it, what are the internships they'd like to do, who are the creative people that they'd like to meet and be inspired by. So we know the saying that you can't be what you cannot see. Our job in education is more about facilitating what learners need, not teaching them what we think they need. So it's a very simple enough idea, but often what we assume is we know better. I would beg to differ because today's young people actually know more. They have more access to information. We're often finding old people asking younger people how to use technologies, how to understand, how to implement some of the newer, kinds of things that are happening in society. We're referring to young people to teach us. So I would give more trust to the learner, give more agency and autonomy, right? And make education a thing that they would want to lead to themselves. And if you go back 2000 years, what did Confucius say? He said, learning happens when learners are seeking it. That is never,
2000 years ago.
yeah, and it's never changed. It is still true. Just by having a beautiful school, wonderful teachers, great English accent, or very good quality textbooks, we don't improve learning. The learner must walk into that room excited to learn and want to retain that curiosity. We've all, I think, watched Ken Robinson's videos, right? From 98% curiosity at age 5, it drops to 2% in adulthood. Much of the contributing factors are in school education. So I think allowing them to be curious, be in the driver's seat is what I would say is the way forward.
But as parents, I really think that sending my kid to a traditional school, okay, in 4 years he becomes a prefect or a class monitor. Isn't that an example of leadership, or are we really talking about leadership from a different perspective? Because when we see leaders, we feel like, okay, that child is a leader. It means that child has more power over other people. But I kind of get the feeling that you're talking about something more soft and something more powerful and more distant from that idea of leading people. You're actually talking about leading.
Yeah. If if you think that we can solve things incrementally, take, for example, I think Tesla has been used as an example many times, right? If we had ambassador cars for so many years, right? Ambassadors, incremental improvements were adding air conditioners, right? Maybe they went as far as tubeless tires, but that's about it. When Tesla started, they did not think, how can I take an old car, an old idea, and improve upon it? They went back to the basics. What is the job to be done? What's the future that we can continue to do this effectively, right? And the approach itself has to be flipped. You can't think that you can solve problems just incrementally tweaking a few things. If my child is getting A grades, can he be the class representative at the next level? What is the problem? Is the goal to be a class representative in a school in a corner of the world? Is that even a goal worthy of chasing? I think we have to set better goals for ourselves. We tend to set goals like, I want to get into a great college. Colleges are places we must hire for furthering our learning, not be thankful for giving us an admission. We are hiring the college for furthering our knowledge in a domain where we are interested in. So learners have to wear, families, I would encourage to wear a different hat when you send children from school to college, saying, my child is interested in this. My child is wanting to further his or her or their knowledge in this direction. And this college seems to have the capacity, and they must show proof that they actually have the capacity and capability to deliver on that. So it's a very flipped approach, but I think that's the general direction in which education will go, because in the end, you can only keep leading people the wrong way so long. It's social proof. How long was apartheid there in South Africa? Was it right ever? It was wrong always. Everybody did it. When the white man said, I think apartheid is wrong, his friends, other whites would have told, what's wrong with you? We're getting free labor, right? When the blacks said it, they got hammered even further. But it was wrong all the while. There was nothing right about it. So doing better at the wrong things doesn't lead to a better outcome. It leads to a wronger outcome.
And for someone to start understanding, realizing, contemplating, and to start building the courage to say that what's normal is not right, to be if what's normal is not right, to be able to call that out and to say what's normal is not right, and I want to dare to be different. I want to stick up to this or stand up to this, or I want to make change happen, requires certain competencies, certain values in 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 an adult, which would have kind of been formed through school. What do you think schools can do or could do or should do, or you know would really would help develop these value systems within the children? And can it be done in a 8 hour day or a 6 hour day, during the teaching of math or science or history or geography? I mean, is that
So
even something that is
it's a
possible?
very interesting question, right? I would say think of it like a mother and a child going in an aeroplane. Who is expected to wear their seatbelt first? The mother,
The mother.
right? And then you put on the seatbelt for the child. Right? If you're not secure in your ability to deliver something, how can you how can you promise to deliver that to somebody else, right? I think schools have to build capacity, capability, organization wide capability in a small subset of areas where they're really good at, where their mission is aligned with, right? Once they've identified it, they must stick to that offering alone, right? In trying to be everybody's champion, we have finally served nobody in particular. Take assessments as a great example. Assessments are designed for sorting human capability. Who needs sorting human capability? Employers are saying gainful employment in this country is at 12%, which means you could have slept in bed and still got 12% gainful employment. You don't need to go to school, to go to college, to go to work in many cases. And the only places where it's still needed is where certificates are coming in the way. Like you can't go become a doctor without a certain certification, but you can become a coder without any certification. You can become a bunch of things in life without those certifications. And lots of organizations are offering diplomas today. There are micro degrees, and online MOOCs are offering things which companies are saying this is sufficient. Do you understand my business? If you understand my business, come, let's start get this show on the road, right? So models are changing. We have to recognize that if you stick with old models, if you take the path along with everybody else, saying this is the safe way, you'll roughly get to where they all get. You can't create new things. We need producers in this world, not consumers. When parents and families go to schools and ask, are you an ICSE school or a CBSE school? What does it matter? It's a syllabus for examination whose purpose is to get you to the next rung of education. It serves no more purpose than that. To say that it gives you a competitive edge. I've often found people doing extraordinarily well at academics. Some of them go on to do extraordinary things in life. Some of them don't. IIT is a classic example. They select all the best students, right? How come some of them choose to die there? How come some of them choose to drop out of there? The assessment system assumes that certain competencies are more important than others. Yes, they are important, but so many other factors come into play when a human being has to thrive in a learning environment. And we must reimagine education and assessments in a completely different way, where you ask the learner to lead the way rather than we decide what is good for them.
And at what age do you think we can start doing that? Because a lot of parents might start thinking that my child depends on me. I am the custodian of my child, the teacher, the school, the principal. These are custodians and they know how children learn, and they don't want to give too much choice to a child because the child might take the wrong choice or the wrong decision. The child may go towards choices which are easier for the child or more entertaining and need not necessarily be challenging. Is there some myth here, or is there some considerations that parents need to take while they will even begin to start understanding what child autonomy is, or what does freedom mean to a child? Anything around that, because you've been around children for such a long time, and you're actually building this amazing organization called Beyond Eight, which I'm a complete fan of.
Thank
And I
you.
really think that's a transformational opportunity available for students of ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? So we should talk more about that. But anything around this idea, when can a child choose? Um,
Often I've heard families come to us and say, how can a child take on these responsibilities? I don't think my child can take on these responsibilities. And often I found that we have not given them those responsibilities at all to even know whether they're capable of taking them on. I think you need guardrails. You can't work in life without guardrails. It's like, the example that comes to mind is, if all of us were, we don't do things in our best interest always. We think we like to say everybody acts in their best interest. Nobody acts in their best interest. Think about it. How often do you go for a full body medical checkup? I don't know. I know it's in a podcast. You probably don't want to tell me, but probably not a lot. Most people don't go for an annual full body health checkup. But is it helpful? I think it is. You're like a machine at some level. There you have to understand what's working well and what's not working well. But we don't do it. But if you go and tell the person, if you don't do it by this month end, there's something bad I will do to you. They'll do it, but they'll do it grudgingly. I think there's an in between spot where you say, I'll give you the guardrails, commit to a date, set some sort of things, some points that learners can reach up to, but not so far out of their capacity or capability that they don't even want to try. So set some targets for themselves, but let them set the targets, but have them aspire to do better and ask them to commit, and they will learn to commit to better outcomes for themselves. Nobody in the world wants to do poorly by themselves. Have you met anybody who wants to do poorly by themselves? I haven't met anybody. I think everybody wants to do well by themselves. They have a different outlook about the world we live in, and we have a different outlook. We have to come to respect the fact that we are not them and they're not us. And we must allow them the space and time. And all of us find our strengths over time. It's not like end of ninth standard, you should know exactly where you're going. I came to education when I was 32. Clearly, I'm a very bad learner, right? I didn't know where. I went all over the place in all kinds of industries I worked in to come to education and say, finally, this is what I wanted to do. If I were a really good learner, I should have come much earlier, right? I think I am very well placed to be in education primarily because I took time. Because when I see learners not needing more time to identify their interests, their strengths, I see myself in them. I see that we are too quick to judge young people today. We are too quick to decide what their fate will be. We don't know anything about tomorrow morning. Forget about 10 years from now. We are often quick, Bill Gates said this, right? We think that we can get a lot done in, what was that? I forget. He says, we think we can do a lot in 10, forget what it is, but the idea is that
I think it's about we tend to think that we can get a lot done in 10 years, but underestimate.
we overestimate. Correct. Good. It's coming back. If we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, and we underestimate what we can do as a collective unit in 10 years. In 10 years, everything is going to be different, and we don't know diddly squat about it. The important thing is prediction, not narration, is the true test of our understanding of the world. We must take active steps in an imagination of a future that we'd like to see. Otherwise, you'll pretty much get only the outcomes that have been narrated in the past.
So that's actually taking an active role in creating your future, which then becomes your present. I'm reminded as you talk about this idea of children liking or students liking what they learn or liking what they want to pursue academically. I'm reminded of this amazing speech that I heard by I think the vice chancellor of the Savitribai Phule University in Pune, where he said that the university runs a massive engineering college, and they get like some 1 lakh students or something who apply for their courses. And the parents do everything possible above the board, beyond the board, below the board, everything. They do everything possible to get admission, get a seat in that college for the engineering classes.
Yeah.
And after the first exam, in the first year of the first year examination in engineering, uh, this VC, Vice Chancellor, saw hundreds and hundreds of students doing morcha in the college, in the university grounds. And he went up to them and he spoke to them and he said, "Why are you doing this morcha?" And the big demand,
Yeah.
like literally, we're talking about these first year engineering students holding the entire campus, to ransom. The big demand is they want 80 KT to move from 4 to 6.
Yeah.
That means it's not enough to fail in 4. They want to still keep for 6.
6.
That is the big demand. And the VC was saying that as he reflected, he was thinking about, why did the parents go through so much trouble to get into a seat or to get an admission? 6 months later, the children are revolting and failing in subjects that they went through so difficultly to get. That just kind of reminds me, maybe it was not their choice.
Yeah.
Maybe it is not their liking. And that reminds me of a beautiful episode that you were sharing the other day when we met, about the teacher and the impact a teacher could have on a subject, and then when one is no more, what the stark realities of what happens. Why don't you share that? I think that would be really interesting.
The before I talk about that particular point, I think it's important to recognize that we're all not questioning who are the people who are framing the laws. If you change the framer, the outcome will be very different. If, for example, a poor person decides what ought to be paid how much, wouldn't different things be paid more? Right? We tend to agree to a condition that suits us actually, and we disagree with what doesn't suit us. So if somebody is saying something I don't like, they're disagreeing with the framers. But if they were allowed to frame the design of that program, the VC might be the one disagreeing. So I think who's in the driver's seat, who gets to decide what is right and what is wrong, is the first problem. The second thing is we keep the point you touched on, that we keep sending kids from one class to another class all the time without ever asking, why are we learning all these things? Do you know why we learned algebra? We learned algebra because in 1820, Howard introduced a course for which algebra was prerequisite knowledge. So all the high schools in the world went and taught algebra, as if all their students are going to go to Howard. This is the only reason we didn't learn algebra. One could always say you learn abstract thinking, you learn critical thinking. You can learn that in 100 different ways. You don't have to have algebra for it, right? Now, it doesn't mean that algebra is not required. Algebra is required by a few, but it's not required by many, right? Why do you think we learn geometry? For the exact same reason. 1870, Howard introduced a course for which geometry was a prerequisite. We're all going around telling our high school learners that they should be masters in geometry. We don't ask who are the framers who put this together. Why? Curricula are no different. Curricula are saying to get into these colleges, this is the curricula you should need. They've already, it's not preordained where you are to go. You have never even asked the learner what you like, what would you like to learn more about, how would you want to participate and engage with the world that you have come into. We don't ask those questions. Instead, we go ahead and talk about what can we do for them, what we think is right for them. I think that framing is, I keep coming back to it. I think who frames these outcomes is so much more important than what we frame itself, because I think we are not the custodians of the future. The young people of today are the ones who are going to have to endure all the things we left behind, which are terrible, and build strong foundations for themselves and for the future. So I don't know. Does that help?
Of course, it absolutely does. And your point really kind of exemplifies the amount of design freedom that school leaders have. They probably don't realize that they can actually design systems that might bring in all this change. They probably think that these things are cast in stone and that they cannot change these things. They probably you
It's
know?
it's like in a business, in a powerful business, you would put everything that you do in the previous year in a parking lot, and then say, I'm only going to continue forward the things that serve the mission in the following year, right? And build new things that will further that mission in a good business, right? We don't do that. We just continue what we did last year, exactly more or less. We were talking about lesson plans earlier.
Yeah.
Lesson plans, if you go back 10 years, I don't think it'll be vastly different from what lesson plans we have today, except that now ChatGPT can do it far better than any one of us could, right? But we've not changed. The model has not changed at all. We're still doing the exact same
There
thing.
are schools who don't change their timetable for 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
They just don't change it. They just keep it the same way because they know it's a hassle to change the timetable.
Yeah. So we have to relook at what are the things that we really want to do that enables young people to be better versions of themselves that they seek. And how much of that can we facilitate in our ecosystem, and how much of that can other people in society do? Why are we the only people who have to educate children? Schools are not it's not obligatory on just schools to pick this up. All of us have to care for the future equally. Industry has to care for it, families have to care for it, schools have to care for it, your kirana store guy also has to care for it, because all of us are going to walk into the same future, whatever that we create, right?
I'm going to ask you a question now, and you can maybe say a yes or a no. And if you say yes, it'll be good to know some of the reasons how that is possible. Can you get a student into a Harvard or a Cornell or a NYU or a Stanford?
Superb question. I can't. Obviously, I am not the one writing it. If I wrote it, surely I won't get in, right? I think it's important to recognize that learners determine their own journeys. And if you push the child towards a Harvard or a Cornell or a MIT, and they went there feeling this was never the place I actually wanted to come to, they'll come either running back or they won't leverage what they're learning. You can go to the best schools in the world and come empty handed if you didn't go there seeking something. If they went there seeking something, guaranteed they will find something. Even if it's not the very thing they went seeking, they will find valuable things because they were curious. They wanted to further their understanding in higher education. If we make again, it's framing that problem, right? If you start thinking of higher education as a furtherance of your interests and passions, you will come out extraordinarily happy, capable, and you'll go to Harvard, wherever. If those are things that you're capable of in the way that society has defined them, you will achieve them. But not everybody who runs this world went to Harvard. Majority of them did not go to Harvard or MIT, right? The world still runs. Right, the problems still exist, and there's problems cropping up every single day. We don't have time to send people to Harvard and MIT. We have to solve these problems.
Yeah.
I think education is somewhat slow in that sense. We're trying to build, if you take management studies, we're teaching the same person accounting, finance, organizational behavior,
Consumer
strategy,
behavior.
management, different from leadership, right? General management. We teach all this thing. Finally, he's going to go sit in prime securities and do trading, for which they didn't need much of those things that they learned. Most of education is like that. We think you may need lots of these things when you actually don't need most of them.
And so all this massive cost that people pay for higher education institutes probably land them just their first job, in which they just stay for 2 or 3 years. So student debt and things like that is a huge mounting problem in today's times, especially in the West. And I think slowly it's coming up in India as well.
It's a tougher problem to solve even for the state. I think when students take on big debt and study in these colleges, often it's in a very big college, obviously, because they're very research focused organizations like Cornell and other universities. You would be paying to be in the presence of people who are doing extraordinary work. And I think those things give you extraordinary access to people and information and knowledge and skill. And I won't take that away. But oftentimes we're paying for just the buildings, just like, for instance, during COVID, the kids who were enrolled in very good programs in these very great schools also didn't get much of that experience. They got only the academic portion of the fee, but the fees did not change. So sometimes it works well. I think you have to pay the right price for. There is a price for everything, I think, and I would say don't determine the outcome by the price. determine it by the experience, or by how it is furthering your own interests and journey forward. So fees is not to be considered as the reason to choose or not choose out of something, I would
So
say.
then what is this model that you're working on? I know that you're working on this very innovative, very alternative style of learning, and it's working in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th standards, typically from an age stage perspective. Tell me why you're doing that. How are
Yeah.
you seeing change happening? And also maybe parents need to know that there are alternate ways, there are other ways of achieving their goals and their desires, especially for their children's success.
Second part is easy. I think parents already, those who want are seeking it, already know it exists and they are finding them. Do they know all of the different attempts at reimagining education? Perhaps not, and there's lots of work to be done in that space. So I don't think it's you can't go. We are, what is that famous thing we say? Where we are risk averse to gains and risk seeking to losses.
Ah,
Right? So, any behavioral economist will tell you that. So we if the perceived losses are big, we take the risk. But today, the alternates to a traditional model are not able to highlight the risk of staying in the losses of staying in the current system. So the
the downside is not very visible.
not visible, so they continue to stay there. If the downside is more visible, people will opt out of it. But it's actually evident for the people looking. Gainful employment at 12%. I talked about it. It's you could get 12%.
Unbundle that a little more.
Yeah,
When
basically,
you
what is
say
gainful employment? As a result of going somewhere to the through a certain education, you get employed in industry. Now, if that's as low as 12%, you could have done anything under the sun and still come close to 12%, I would
You
imagine,
mean
right?
out of 100 people, 12% would get a.
Get gainful employment as a result of the education that they
So I
receive.
studied chemical engineering. I would get a job in chemical
Yeah,
engineering with a
correct,
job with
correct.
with a salary which is commensurate to a chemical
Chemical
engineer starter.
Correct.
And
And that's at 12%.
12 out of 100 people do get that.
Get that.
Which means the
You
rest
could-
88 people are probably doing jobs that they
Ola and other things.
didn't want to do.
Yeah, they didn't want to do. They don't have options sometimes. They've been misled most times. The world has told them this is a great opportunity, great option for you. And then when they come up to the workplace, they say, oh, I was at a industry meet where the company is building skills. They have a school of learning themselves. Many companies are backward integrating. Colleges are moving into school education space, saying we can help high school learners learn better. Finally, the person that decides whether all of this 18 years or 22 years of work that we do with children was worthwhile is, if by traditional models, industry, right? Industry is saying it is not working. What you did is not useful at all. What you did, you might as well not do anything, because I can start with a clean slate and help these people learn something that's meaningful. So I think we have to sort of accept and acknowledge that fact that it is not working. We have so much data points. So families that are seeking that information, they have that information. As for your question about Beyond 8 itself, like I said, if families know that we exist and they see what we are doing, they talk to our learners, understand what the learner's journey is from the learners in our ecosystem, the learners that have progressed from Beyond 8, talk to them. There's a family that's enrolled their second child after seeing their first child go through 4 years of education at Beyond 8. And they were literally the first or second learner. Their first child was the first learner, I think, in Beyond 8. And they've come back now, and I feel there's that conviction that we are doing right by them. In the end, we're ordinary people trying only ordinary things. It's not magic. Our effort is sincere, right? Our commitment is wholesome to the child. So everything leads from there. Make the design such that children thrive in this ecosystem. And we've actually made the programmatic offering so much richer today. I think their second child is going to have a vastly better experience than their first child. Not to say that it was a bad experience the first time around, but as any learning organization, we too have evolved considerably. And that'll be if you're in the learning ecosystem, the first person who's learning has to be right at the top of the organization. So I'm a learner first. I'm blessed with an incredible team of people that are leading the different elements of the program that we offer, and all of us are driven by that mission. So I think it's suitable for families that put learners ahead, families that put their children's voices first, that don't that listen, not hear. Or is it the other way around?
Well, listen, not hear makes sense.
Listen here, not make sense. Okay, then that
It
must be
makes sense.
then it must be right.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right? I think listening is so important. We hear a lot of things of our teenagers, but we don't really listen to them. I think families that listen to their teenagers are finding that their teenagers have a passion, they have an interest. Often in the first element of what we do in Beyond It, parents come back and say, I never knew so much about my child. And it's not because of anything we did. All we are asking is, who are you? What are your aspirations? What would you like to do? What is your imagination of learning? What's your imagination of your own best adulthood? Right? And when they say that, the families are startled that this is the imagination of their own child. So I think listening is more important. So families that listen will to their children will find a lot of happiness. I think they have to be grounded in the reality that we're also people trying to put together a new kind of offering. It's not a perfect system. I don't think every organization has this normal distribution, right? You have
The
great
bell curve.
people, yeah. You have great people that are furthering your mission, and there's always a team of people that you need to upskill, bring up to speed, so that the mission is more achievable as a result of that. So yeah.
So talking about listening, if you know right now that there are students, 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th standard, 12th standard students listening to our conversation right now, what would be the three things that you would like them to hear and listen to from you?
Okay, so when we make a presentation to families when they are considering Beyond It, we say that we do 4 things and no more, right? You can hold us accountable for 4 things only, no more than these 4 things. First is agency and autonomy. That means agency gives learners the capacity to learn. We're going to live a long life thanks to medical marvels, right? We are going to have to keep learning in order to be part of the economic cycle of life, right? So we're going to have to develop learning to learn skills, right? And autonomy is, how do you apply that? Where do you apply your that agency? What do you want to learn? And what combinations do you want to learn? Do you want to learn this deeper? Do you want to learn that wider? Right? That's agency and autonomy. First thing. Second thing is flexibility and convenience. We offer an education that is flexible so that children, teenagers especially, can pursue the things that they're passionate about, not to build a better portfolio to get into college, but because they're actually thinking of solving something. They want to know more about something. They're curious about something. To engage with that curiosity, we provide a very flexible program, and it's flexible and convenient. We don't typically, schools, when a school starts, first thing they look for is land. Land is not the primary source of learning. The primary source of learning is great engagements that build curiosity in learners. So we are very conveniently placed. We're always trying to be as close to the city as possible, because the city as a learning space is what we imagine Beyond 8 as. A third is a purposeful education. I think often we used to find learners in high school graduating, getting their A stars and 90s and hundreds and everything, and have no foggy idea what to do next, because they've spent all of this high school years only getting the 100, or pursuing a impossible number, and then for the first time they right after that last exam is the first time they're actually thinking, oh, I have to think about the future now. Can I just take a break? Right? I think a purposeful
Take
education.
a gap
year. Yeah, take a gap year. And kids are doing it. And I think they're smart for it. I think there's no hurry to get into this economic cycle. There are some families that have that condition where they have to get to earning ability faster, but a lot of families today don't. I think we must distinguish ourselves differently. If you have the capacity to give your child that extra year to spend in developing self-worth, identifying their interests, building a purposeful education, I think that's important. So that's the third. And the fourth is an education for life. We tell potential families that don't take so many subjects that you won't learn about yourself, stay curious. Take 4 subjects in A2 level, right, in Cambridge, or in NIOS, maybe 5, but take only enough to be able to have a liberal education. Liberal education is not just, do what you want. Sometimes I've heard people think that liberal means do whatever the hell you want. Yeah, there is that version of liberal also, or liberal political leanings. in our context, liberal education means building capacities around communication, creative thinking, critical thinking, ethical reasoning, moral reasoning, right? Communication. Those are, you can't do those through serendipitous moments. You have to have a design for anything that you want to do well. So we have milestones and projects for students to build their liberal values. And I think uh, learners come only for three reasons to any learning engagement. They come, first of all, to, like I earlier alluded to, they come to meet their friends and continue yesterday's conversations and have a lot of fun. That's the first reason they come to. We do a heck of a lot of that and beyond it. Second reason children come to school is to be enriched. We must enrich them. If they come back and heard us say boring things and they go back, they have not been enriched at all. So we make sure that every engagement is enriching, and we want them to leave feeling successful every day. If they feel a sense of self-worth and feel successful, it's likely they'll come back tomorrow cheerful for learning.
This is absolutely eye-opening, because when you're able to tell parents so clearly, when you're able to elucidate so beautifully, these are the four things that you can hold us accountable to. I think you also remain accountable to that, and you create so much meaning and purpose and so much alignment between what the organization is trying to do and what people are there to receive. And there's really hardly any cognitive dissonance, dissonance in that sense. In a podcast like this, we discuss a lot of things, and as we do, a lot of things come to your mind. Is there anything that comes to your mind that you'd like to touch upon, you'd like to expand on, you'd like to amplify? Anything that I may not have been able to bring to the table on our discussion today? I'd really like to, set this space up to give you all the autonomy and choice and leadership of thought that you
I think we all need it. Learners need it the most. So I would begin there. Give your children, I would encourage families to give children more responsibilities. Allow them to fail. Failure is a good thing. Failure is how we learn. Don't be afraid of failures. If we make mistakes, yes, we can learn from them and not do them again. But failure is about exploring things you don't know much about. So I think we must encourage our youth to be bold and confident. It's important that we are very humane and humble in our approach. We should not think we know a lot. Often we tend to, having worked in 20 years, I have that fear of myself that I've seen every kind of family, every kind of learner, every kind of teacher, every kind of industrialist. I don't want to believe that that is true, because it's like I earlier said, it's a dynamic environment. Nothing stays solved here. I think we all have to be open to new possibilities. Be learners yourselves as adults. I don't learn with your children. The closer we are to the learning journey, we ourselves, the better it is for learners. The more we know, the more we sort of dictate to young people what learning is. We think we know and they don't know, and we sort of ridicule learning in different styles, different speeds. I think be nimble. It's important to be nimble. World is changing. We have to be sort of quick to adapt and slow to complaining. I think it's very, very important. Don't be quick to complain about things. Be collaborative in nature and solve these problems together with people that have committed their lives to solving these problems, because their intention, after all, is to solve the problem. They're not doing it. It's not the intention that has gone wrong. It's just the outcome. When they say when if you don't like the output, take a look at the input. Yeah. Right. So take a look at the input. Maybe we're doing all the wrong things. Right. So I would say be bold, trust in your children. And education requires patience. We cannot change like the wind. Industries all the time asking young people to have different set of skills. What will always be required of young people is humility, empathy, social mindedness, inclusiveness, equity, not equality. Seek equity, right? These are and don't have biases. If you have them, keep them to yourselves, because we are getting to know more of the world we live in every single day. And I watched another video recently in which they said the speaker said, if you thought of the last 2 million years as just the last 1 year, think of the last 2 million years as just 1 year. Much of what we know and have achieved happened in the last 15 minutes on December 31st. So don't take yourself too seriously. We know very little about anything, right? We're all learners. Our children are learners too. Let's sort of journey with our children and be devoted to their well-being, not not their jobs and careers, but for their fulfilling lives, I would say.
Thank you so much, Navi Mahesh. That was such an insightful presentation and podcast that we had today. And I really think that, we need more people
I
doing.
would say that we need more Billies. I think you're doing an incredible job. All, whatever, 15, 20 years I've known you, you have left no stone unturned. You've tried every trick in the book. I think that openness to new possibilities, to improve learning, to excite young people. I learned everything so much from you every day. Today I learned so many things. I can't wait to try those out. So I want to thank you, your team. Incredible work you guys are doing. And if I can play any part in furthering the work that you do, I'll be happy to.
You're absolutely welcome. On a closing note, I want to ask you one question because I know, like me, your mom, my mom is a teacher. Your mom is also an educator. And she's been an educator impacting the lives of so many students across India through her books and I think in mathematics.
I did it, mathematics. Yeah.
Yes, in mathematics. What have you seen and learned from her that she may or may not have explicitly taught you that has made you who you are today?
Hard to say whether it was explicit or not, but I think I learned by just observing. Even today, she's thinking of learning things. Her greatest strength is that she's a learner first. And if I reflect on my own journey, I have remained a learner till this day. I've learned, I think, like I've alluded to in other conversations, I started learning as soon as I left school. And I've been a vicious learner. I've been learning, eager to learn, hungry for learning all the time. I think I get that from her. I think leaders have to be learners first. And she's had obviously an incredible journey. And I think lots of people like her in so many families. I think in South India, this is probably more true. We are all having somebody close to us that was a teacher. My house, my wife and I have been teachers. My brother's a teacher. My mom's a teacher. My dad's a teacher. So, I guess we took to teaching, but I think we were first learners ourselves. I think the biggest thing, whether it was explicitly, I don't know, I can't recollect her saying that you should learn. I think just watching her learn every day somehow transferred to me, and I've been a learner all this time. So
absolutely fantastic. I hope one day we get an opportunity to do a podcast with your mom.
Oh, that'll be lovely.
And we got to be able to really bring to light the amazing wisdom and the amazing efforts that our parents put
absolutely
into just ensuring that we are at an advantage.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Naveen, for being at the Will Talks podcast.
Thank you so much.